By working together off the field, you'll create success for yourself on the field. Ultimately, that's the goal. Although I would argue, and Mr. Siega pointed out in the first time we met, we want to sell players. We want to generate revenue for our clubs. How do we do that? And I think, for me, the best way of doing that is developing players for the national team. Why would you want to do that? What is the benefit for you guys to develop players for the national team? Anybody?
Exposure.
Exposure. So, you know, right now, your vision statement would be putting players in a shop window. That's what we would call it back in the UK. Right now, your shop window, Jamaican players for sale, Ricardo, Donovan, Demar, and Ricardo. They're all in a shop window. They wouldn't have got there if they hadn't played for the national team. They wouldn't have got there if they hadn't come through your system. So there is where your shared and collective agenda must be. You've got to have that shared vision. Because the more players and get the exposure, the more money is going to come back to you guys. Yep. So if we look at the current national team structure, and from what I understand, and like I say, I'm making some assumptions, you've got the U15s, U17s, U20s, U23s up until it's the Olympic program, and then the national team. I looked at that, and then I went and looked at your structure that you have here with the Jamaican clubs, and this is what I say. There's a disconnect. You've got an under-21 reserve league, and you have the senior the senior professional teams. So, how do we fix that? Well, we have a vision. Steps to success, I called it. Year one. You get 20 players in your squad. Now think about the numbers. The numbers for me are important because it's going to lead to where we're going to be at the end. And what's important is how do we generate revenue. So think about the numbers right off the bat. And think about the advantage that you have as a small country, and because you're an island, you've got a captive audience. Just think about that when we go down the line. In year one, you have 22 players per squad. Now I'm looking at age groups 15 to 17. Overall, with 12 teams in the league, you've got 480 players now at the youth level. What's the advantage to you? You're going to think right off the bat, well, I'm adding 40 players to my to the stress on my budget. You're thinking it's going to cost me a lot of money. But over the course of the league, you're going to have 400 players total in your system. But what you've done right now, you've managed to mirror your national team setup. You've got your U15s, your U17s, obviously the U21s, there's going to be some sort of transition here between the U20s and the U23s, but that is relatively close. If I'm talking to a sponsor and he says, tell me about your academy system, tell me about your youth system, and you say, well, we're thinking about doing one and we don't have one, you can basically turn around and say, well, hang on a minute, we have 480 players in our system here that's being coached by professional coaches or at least more knowledgeable guys within the community reaching out. You've now got their attention. You're giving them the numbers, but what you're doing is you're creating better players. You're bringing them together. Years 2 and 3, you're looking at adding in the 9s and 11s and 13s. Why would you do that? Well, you know, in the US, we call this a farm system. You want to create good habits. If you're developing and nurturing players, you've got to get them in, learn from the professionals. And we had a heated debate last night, Barry and I, on how do you develop professional players? They need to be alongside the professional players. They need to be playing at different levels. And we've all got a different philosophy on that. But basically what it does for you, you're adding 100 kids into your program. Why would you do that? It's all about percentages. The more players that come through your system, guess what happens? More players are going to make it to the professional. The better professional players are going to move into the national team. So you've got to have that synergistic approach with the JFF on, we want to help you develop players. We're also developing players for ourselves. We're providing you with the ammunition. You're providing us with the shop window to put these guys in eventually. And then obviously they come back. So over maybe a 2 or 3 year system, I know it's aggressive, but you have to shake things up. If you're going to do things, you've got to jump in and get it done. or you just sit back there. You go with your U9s through your professional players. You've created a farm system. So here's your proposed model. 6 and 8s. You want to have your current professional players in the schools, doing clinics, doing community outreach programs. I call it shaking hands and kissing